let me kick this off. Okay, first and foremost, welcome everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. Welcome to this week's special sponsored edition of the Privacy Exchange Community's Privacy Show and Tell series with our very special guest, Thomas Adhumeau. So Thomas serves as the Chief Privacy Officer of Didomi. I mean, please correct me if I've said that wrong as well. It's a global company offering consent-related solutions. So in today's session with Thomas, we will discuss the work that he does at Didomi, the current state of consent globally, and get his spicy thoughts on the EU-US data privacy framework and all of the drama surrounding it. So we'll spend 25 minutes or so together. First, the first 15 minutes is with Thomas and I having a chat, and then we will turn off the recording and open it up to audience Q&A. So we turn off the recording so that you feel confident asking whatever kind of questions you would like. As a reminder, before we get started, even though Thomas is a legal professional, he is not your legal professional. All of the information shared today is for general informational purposes only and is not legal advice. So if you do need legal advice, please contact your own attorney. All right, let us hop in. Thomas, my first question to you is, I'd like to know more about Didomi and what services you provide to your clients, who your typical customers are, and if you could please tell me if I'm saying the name right and what that name actually means.
So you're saying the name right. So hi, everyone. And thank you for the invitation, for having me here today. So regarding Didomi, we're European leader in consent management platforms. We're basically a consent management platform. We secure consent for our customers and we enable them to activate the consented data in Europe mostly, but we also have like plenty of US customers now, and we're expanding. As to the customers that we have, there's a focus at the company on big enterprise customers. So the regular customer would be like a major publisher with many websites operated, owned and operated, operating across various jurisdictions. But we also have like all kinds of customers like we support, but like whenever it gets very complex with like many jurisdictions involved and many websites, that's usually where we that's our sweet spot, I would say.
Yeah. And I just heard you have some good news to share that your company has raised some funds and you've just acquired a new company called Addingwell. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about that company and how that's going to augment the services you provide to customers?
Yes, so absolutely. So that happened like I think 6 weeks ago. So it's very, very recent. I think the first time we spoke, Mary, it wasn't like something we could share. But given the market, that's really good news. So we raised $72 million through an American investor, actually, Marlin Equity. And part of the deal was to acquire Addingwell. So it's yet another French company. And what they do is they provide server-side tagging solution. So what is it? It's basically so everything used to happen like client side. So I don't know if everybody is very familiar with that, but like all the tags were fired, all the data was shared through the browser. And now things are changing a bit, and a lot of customers are moving server side. So basically using like a proxy, where all the tags are going to be controlled and managed, and then that's where the data starts being sent to third parties. The major advantage of this, I mean, there's plenty, but the main one is first you secure consent from your users, or at least you provide like an opt-out link, which is more often the case in the US. But once you have secured, like from a privacy standpoint, your users' consent to, the data being shared or being used for various data processing activities, then you can also control where that data is going and which data is being sent to which partner, which in a client-side situation or scenario doesn't really exist. The also really good thing is it helps like, bypass browsers limitations, ITP, I mean, everything that exists on Firefox, and also ad blockers. So it basically increases the consent rate or the consented data that you can actually leverage, you know, whether you're a publisher or an advertiser. So that's where we're really becoming now a partner from also a marketing standpoint.
Interesting. Well, congratulations on that. I know you weren't able to share it. I literally just learned about it today. So congrats to you and the entire team on the funds and the acquisition. Toma, I would like to know more about your role as a chief privacy officer. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis?
So it's very challenging, but I've got like, I'm a chief privacy officer, but I have like a very unique dual role, given the fact that we are a privacy tech provider. And so I'm the usual chief privacy officer. I handle all the compliance work. I speak a lot with our data protection officer as well on a regular basis. I make sure that we comply with all the laws globally. Um, and to be fair, like to a certain extent, like sometimes I'm also almost like a general counsel. I'm not just a chief privacy officer. Uh, but the interesting part of my job is also that I am basically the first user of all the features and the solutions that we end up developing. Um, we often say that we drink our own champagne, and that's true. So I also make sure that, working closely with the product team, they know what the requirements are in all the jurisdictions where we sell our product. But I also make sure, and that's very interesting and challenging at times, I also make sure they understand that our customers' interpretations of local laws is always going to be different. Like it's going to change. And sometimes it's really difficult. Like if I take Europe, for instance, like I need to understand like how a German bank is going to um, interpret like the requirements of the law, and at the same time, I need to understand like how a Spanish publisher, regular publisher, is going to get it. And often, like there's like different ways of interpreting the law. There's one interpretation per lawyer, basically, and so that's where it gets interesting. But I would say it's comfortable as well because being a chief privacy officer at a company that basically sells privacy tech solutions, it's uh, it's. I mean, my expertise is very relevant to what we do, basically.
Yeah. It's really cool that you're able to drink your own champagne, as you say, as a professional with the background that you do have in all sorts of legal roles, and now being at the forefront of this changing area of consent. So speaking of that, and since we've got you on the line, I would love to pick your brain a little bit about the transparency and consent framework. There's been some drama. I know that you've been following this for years. It's been going through all sorts of court things where they're affirming and then appealing and what's going on. So just for everyone in the audience, so we are on the same page, there is a technical framework called the Transparency and Consent Framework, or TCF, that an industry group, the Interactive Advertising Bureau Europe, or IAB, developed for collecting user consent. And it's come under some legal challenges. Specifically whether like the TC string, which is the machine readable consent string, is personal data or not. And therefore, does that invoke IAB Europe as a joint controller? So Tomas, fill us in. Is this consent framework illegal now? or not? And what does this mean for people who are using the TCF framework?
Yeah, I'm not sure how familiar people are with the TCF, the Transparency and Consent Framework, but I would just say that there's the equivalent in the US, which is called GPP, so Global Privacy Platform. What I mean, in short, what the TCF is a protocol to communicate and convey consent through the advertising industry or value chain. And so it's just like a random bit of numbers that's being sent to advertising players so that they know whether they can process the data or not. Um, and so to answer your question, it's not illegal. That's the bottom line. Like I'm gonna cut it really short. Um, the 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 saga that was going on like for many years with like the case going to the appeal court, then to the Court of Justice of the European Union, then going back to the Court of Justice, then going back now to the Data Protection Authority in Belgium. What happened is basically that the IAB Europe, so the association that created the TCF, they didn't know that the TC string, they didn't assume that they were like a data controller of that information, and they weren't even sure that it was personal information. So because they misqualified the situation, they never really tried to comply with the GDPR or e-privacy because they just assumed that it was the advertising industry that was responsible for everything that was happening and not them as a non-profit association just providing the framework and the tools. They were wrong, and honestly, they could. That was a major mistake from on their part, and they got sanctioned for that. But ultimately, the TCF in itself is not, deemed illegal. It was not like sanctified either. Like there's things that are not super well done, and that are going to be improved. And honestly, it's not even a surprise. Like. It doesn't like it would have been crazy that the advertising industry would have managed to develop a protocol to convey consent information in full compliance with privacy laws. I mean, the advertising industry is always pushing a bit like the limits, and so they didn't do it like quite right, but they can like just re-engine a few things, and that's going to be okay. And so, as to what companies should be doing, I mean, there's no plan B. So there's not like um, a solution that they could eventually start using to replace the TCF. And so they should continue to use it. They should participate and improve it where it's needed. But ultimately, it's a good protocol, and there's good chances as well that it will end up being what we call code of conduct. So it will eventually get approved by the French Data Protection Authority. I was in the room talking about this with the CNIL in France, and that was, I think, 4 years ago. That's when the case started, and then they paused everything, like basically because of the case. But now that it's over and that IB Europe is going to fix things, I think they will reopen that conversation, and so the TCF is dead, but long live the TCF. I think that's what's going on.
Okay, so stay the course is the message right now. There's really no
Yeah,
be
that's it.
see what happens next, but for now, keep using the TCF if you're using the TCF. So I'm actually curious. Didomi has a large perspective on consent, and I know above and beyond TCF, you have other perspectives, and you just published an annual report, data privacy benchmark on consent collection. Can you share some high-level highlights from that report with us?
Sure. Um, I mean, the main thing is that consent rates are stable in Europe now. It's not moving a ton. Like, there's still room for improvement, but things are like really staying on course. Like there's still like 80 to 85% of people that are consenting to their data being used in on most websites. Um, but then, like we've also noticed that there's companies where it's more like 50, 60%, and others where it's more like 90, 95. And that really depends on many things. Um, and mostly the UX when asking for consent. The more the banner is well designed, well crafted to accommodate and super clear as to what's happening, people tend to just like consent. And when it's done in a different way, where it looks like you're just like trying to hide or conceal the banner, in the end, like that's where it becomes a bit trickier to obtain consent. So that's counter intuitive, but that's how it works. And also on mobile, we see a decrease. So there's definitely a decrease happening on mobile consent. It's probably due to the user interfaces on mobile, which are, I don't know, making it a bit trickier or to secure like a consent. It could also be because of Apple ATT. So, ask app not to track. People are just like used to say no. I don't know if you're the same, but I almost constantly say no on there. And so that's more or less like but the situation in Europe, I would say, hasn't really changed that much from a consent perspective. But there's still room for improvements, like on a case by case basis. There's work that can be done by companies.
So just let me make sure I understood you correctly. When you design a banner, when you use proper, not deceptive, aka dark pattern design, you actually get more people consenting than when you make it difficult to understand.
Yeah. So having said that, dark patterns are also working. So
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
say it's more like I was thinking because the regular, format that we have is like a pop-in where you see everything and it's easy to understand like what your options are. But then sometimes you can have like people putting like the banner at the right corner or like super tiny, and then people start like investigating it more. And that's where they because it's not going away anyway, and so that's where. And there's also uh, I mean, I'm talking about like the banners that are offering a choice to say no, and on ours it's almost like always the case. And so yeah, but that's counterintuitive, but dark patterns work as well. So I want to be clear on that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for clarifying though that leading with transparency versus designing something a little bit more hard to navigate or hard to see actually invites more scrutiny is what I'm.
Exactly.
Um, we would like to drop that report in the chat. Ryan, if you'd be so kind to do that, that would be great. I know we just have 6 minutes of questions left. I just real quick give me like a 10-second answer. What is happening with the EU US data privacy framework? And then we will open it up to audience questions.
I mean, to be fair, like I don't know exactly what's happening, and what I know is I expected that it would have gone like already under like a few months ago, since it was I mean, given the new administration in the US, and given the fact that it was a Biden decree that created it, I genuinely thought that it was going to go away quicker. It didn't happen, surprisingly, but it's like not super effective anymore. Like there's, I think, three Democrats that were part of the that got fired, and so it's not like really operating anymore. I think there's no money anymore as well. I mean, I can't remember exactly what the situation is, but this like um, irrespective of what's happening in the US, there's also what's happening in Europe. And in Europe, there's always the cases that have been raised to complaints again against the data privacy framework. So all in all, And the EU Commission is looking into it as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of scrutiny anyway coming from Europe. And so we've seen that movie before with the Safe Harbor and then with the Privacy Shield. It would be naive to think that that it's going to survive. So I think companies should just get ready with contingency plans and start like thinking about other means to make those data transfers between the EU and the US legal or lawful.
Yeah, it's a trilogy now. Okay, I do want to make sure we have time for just a couple questions.